Yesterday's part ended with some of the things that happened at Lingwu Academy. Then because Ling Feng felt lacking in strength, he went to a remote place to cultivate. And during the few days there Ling Feng's realm improved drastically. Besides that, while he was there, Ling Feng felt a strong aura emerging from a cave. Curious about what monsters inhabited the place, Ling Feng started to enter the cave. Then what happens next? We see the storyline. The story continues when Ling Feng starts to enter to explore the cave. But before entering, suddenly a woman comes and gives him advice not to go inside. That woman was one of the disciples of the Lingyuan Academy named Dugu. Dugu told him that this place was forbidden and dangerous, considering that several times people who came here to collect heirlooms could not get out, because this cave is inhabited by monsters that have a high realm and are very deadly. Hearing this, Ling Feng accepted his suggestion and was about to leave here. He also thanks her for the advice. However, those words were just a lie, because even though Ling Feng knew the risk, he would still enter. Not long after he entered this cave to look for heirlooms. When you are inside, you can see a lot of skulls there. Moreover, the deeper the aura, the stronger it is, so Dugu's words are true that there are very strong monsters inside. Not long after that disaster came, which unexpectedly appeared a terrible monster, where the form of the monster is red blood in the form of a dragon named Blood Beast. Looking at him, Ling Feng is not afraid at all, remembering in a book he read Blood Beast has no intelligence. However, not having intelligence, blood beasts are known to have strong physical strength, so it would be extremely difficult for Ling Feng to be able to take down a blood beast. Not long after, Ling Feng started to slash, but the slash had no effect. This makes Ling Feng confused and how to defeat him. And due to thinking too hard, Ling Feng didn't realize that Blood Beast had landed an attack in the form of a fireball. This attack had a lot of effect on Ling Feng, but thanks to his physical endurance, Ling Feng managed to withstand the big attack. Next, Ling Feng attacked again and again, but unfortunately, some of the attacks he did were just in vain. But finally, he found an idea of a way to beat Blood Beast, where should he launch such a devastating attack so that the blood beasts cannot regenerate. Then with his mainstay attack, Ling Feng succeeded in overthrowing the blood beast. But here Ling Feng didn't expect that he was also injured, where as a result of the clash earlier his hand was burnt. But his Golden Kai blessing didn't make his hand seriously injured, and it was only the outside. Feeling that his energy was running out, Ling Feng immediately looked for the heirloom and then rushed out of there. Not long after that, Ling Feng finally found the heirloom he was looking for, and when holding it unexpectedly his hand was injured and his blood dripped onto a skull. Suddenly the Tenkorang issued thousands of attacks continuously and spread throughout his body. This situation made Ling Feng in pain and could only surrender. In his mind, Ling Feng said even though his body was very strong, if a deep attack like this he couldn't hold it back. And is this the end of his life? In his last seconds, Ling Feng had just remembered that this attack could be neutralized with his Golden Kai. Then in no time Ling Feng took out his Golden Kai and absorbed all the fragments to dissipate and merge into himself. The short story is 5 days later when Ling Feng is seen to have overcome the problem and come out without the slightest wound. Where during the 5 days in the cave Ling Feng learned several new abilities, and most importantly, Ling Feng managed to use the fragment manipulation ability to a very powerful attack. Even though it is not as strong as the fragment in the cave, if this attack is given to someone then it will be a fatal attack. Finally, after being here for a long time, Ling Feng intends to go home, but he won't bring King. The reason is that if he brings him home, it will make everyone restless. So it's better to ask King to be here, and if needed then he will ask her to appear. And because earlier Ling Feng got a few elixirs, Ling Feng gave him 3 bottles to speed up his cultivation. The panel changes to Lingyu Academy, where while waiting for the arrival of Ling Feng, Teacher Yumeng has a guest who turns out to be a senior alchemist at his old academy named Suzai Rui. It seemed that even though they used to be masters and students, they both seemed to be enemies. This turned out to be the reason Yumeng didn't like her. Rui always teased her. Moreover, his arrival here also intends evil for him. Therefore Teacher Yumeng intends to expel him so that Rui will not cause trouble at this academy. However, instead of kicking him out, Rui slapped him. Seeing this, as a student here, Ling King intends to protect Master Yumeng. It's a shame. Again, Rui isn't here. Back off instead, he boldly beats Ling King and his first student. Then the master who saw this was of course angry and asked Rui for clarification. But Rui said liar that earlier was just a misunderstanding. Of course, Ling King was angry because Rui didn't tell the truth. And at the right time, Ling Feng finally came and wanted revenge on Rui for hurting Master and Ling King. Ling Feng said he was a disciple of the Holy Mountain. Hearing this, Rui just laughed and said, if you are a disciple of Holy Mountain, prove your strength. With a smile, Ling Feng gave off a deathly aura that made Rui pause and admits it. He finally apologized for everything he did before, but just apologizing didn't make Ling Feng's anger subside. Then Ling Feng finally decided in exchange for his thanks, Ling Feng asked Rui to block his 3 attacks. Hearing this, Rui was very grateful and put on defensive alert. But what the small attack just now meant was a fragment attack, where just 1 hit left Rui in pain. Rui then asked for relief, honey, but it was not granted by Ling Feng, who continued to attack 2 more times. And from there Rui finally realized what Ling Feng said was true, that he was a disciple of the Holy Mountain. However, even though he had given the punishment earlier, it seemed that Ling Feng still felt the evil aura from Rui, for he would not let Rui leave this academy alive. After that, Ling Feng and King search for the whereabouts of Rui and are about to kill him. Coincidentally, Ling Feng also saw Wu Yu, who had come to Lingwu Academy to get revenge on him. Seeing the situation that happened, Ling Feng had a good idea where Ling Feng would make plans to kill the 2 of them without being caught, where he will lure Wu Yu to meet Rui, and after the 2 of them meet, Ling Feng will create an alibi that Rui is his brother. This plan, and seeing Wu Yu, Ling Feng's stupidity predicted that this plan would go smoothly, and after waiting for a long time, finally Wu Yu fell into a trap and fought with Rui, where in that battle Rui very quickly managed to kill Rui, because Wu Yu's level was now far above his level. Now after Rui has been killed, Ling Feng will start the second plan, which is to ask King to kill Wu Yu and a few of his subordinates. In the morning, rumors about Wu Yu and Rui's deaths had spread. Several people, including Master Yu Meng, were suspicious as to why their deaths seemed premeditated. Even though they were suspicious, it seemed that their doubts disappeared after they were thankful that no one was hurting this academy anymore. While on the side of Ling Feng, as if he did not know about this so as not to be suspected that he had killed them both. 3 months later, Master Yu Meng was furious as to why Ling Feng had not returned for weeks. Ling King explained that Ling Feng was on a journey to increase his cultivation, though soon there will be an annual Mo Ling competition. While in a remote place, Ling Feng finally managed to complete his training and was getting stronger. Of course, Ling Feng did this hard training because some of the students from other academies had strong people, so he could at least increase his realm to match their strength. We transfer to Lingwu Academy, where students from the adjoining academy started arriving for the annual Mo Ling competition. It can be seen that the students are enthusiastic about this big competition, considering that several big academies have strong and invincible students. So later the match will be very exciting because many Murdocs are strong and have special abilities. And one of them is Dugu. Dugu is a woman that Ling Feng once met in the cave at the beginning of the story. Before long, the master then asked the disciples to choose one of the woods, where the wood later is to randomize who their opponents are and which round they will fight in. Seen picking up the wood, some of the disciples are showing off their strength. Their reason for doing so was obviously to make some students get scared and give up before the competition started. And during an hour of drawing, only one piece of wood remained, and to be precise, the remaining piece of wood belonged to Ling Feng, where like a hero Ling Feng appeared amidst them. Finally, after completing the thing, it's the Mo Ling competition officially opened. But before that, Ling Feng saw that several strong people possessed mysterious power, but even though he was worried, he seemed to be happy because he could fight people who were stronger than him. The first match started with Ling King against one of Mo Yunzhang's students named Meng. In this first match, Ling King was nervous, but after being cheered up by Ling Feng, Ling King became optimist. Then with his yellow weapon, Ling King began to attack and succeeded in overthrowing the disciple. In the third and 100 rounds, Ling Wu's academy experienced consecutive defeats, and the Ling Wu Academy could only hope for Ling Feng alone. After a long wait, finally, it was Ling Feng's turn. As usual, his enemies always underestimate him. And in the end, the ridicule turned around and Ling Feng managed to go down with a single punch. Ling King's next match would be against Mo Lan. In the beginning, Ling Feng was frightened because Mo Lan was cruel and terrible. But with his current strength, she must be optimistic about winning. Meanwhile, Mo Lan was optimistic about winning from the start because there was no way she could lose to a lowly person like Ling King. Without lingering for a long time, Mo Lan launched an attack with her flagship whip, but unexpectedly the attack was easily broken by Ling King. Annoyed that his attack was broken, Mo Lan continued the second attack with Daxia, but again the attack was successfully broken. Ling King's attack managed to hit Mo Lan and injure her. With that attack, Mo Lan couldn't stand up, indicating that this match was won by Ling King. The next match was Ling Feng against one of Mo Yunzhang's students named Ling Qian. In this match, Ling Feng was bored because the opponent was of a weak realm and not very strong. Hearing this, Ling Qian was angry and was about to show his strength. Long story short, the fight started when Ling Qian started tracking several attacks on Ling Feng. But several times the attack was successfully broken without the slightest injury, until finally Ling Qian, who was already annoyed, took out his mainstay ability to be able to beat Ling Feng. Unfortunately, even though it was his full ability, he was broken and Ling Feng ended with a hard blow that made Ling Qian fall. In this way, Ling Feng passed on to the next stage. 4 days had passed since the Mo Ling competition officially opened, and on the 4th day, the final round was held. In the first round, Ling King will fight Dugu, where this battle progressed swiftly due to only one strike. Ling King surrendered. Here Ling King attacked because she felt that her strength was far below his, so rather than getting hurt badly enough, it's better to give up. While Dugu's strength was also acknowledged by Ling Feng since the attack earlier was unusual, so Ling Qing's decision to surrender was the right choice. Next, we will not explain all the battles that took place because many names must be mentioned and various others. So we'll take the big part of the story, which of the several matches that took place began to show. Some of the people who passed were the strongest students from each academy, including Zhang Sui, Dugu, Mo Kong, and a giant tree named Shui Ling Long. What seemed to be some of the disciples that worried Ling Feng was Ling Long, because he seemed to be hiding his strength. Meanwhile, Mo Kong, who made it through this, promised Ling Feng that he would still win so he could get through it. Seeing that Ling Feng only responded with a smile. In the next match, Mo Kong will fight Long Hao. Here Mo Kong seems to underestimate Long Hao, even though Long Hao is one of the giant trees. Soon the fight started. With his powerful attack, Mo Kong made a big attack on Long Hu. Meanwhile, Long Hu issued a prefecture-level ability where the attack could parry and hit Mo Kong, causing him to be thrown far away and unconscious. And it could be seen that the giant tree's disciples were very strong. With that defeat, Mo Kong could not keep his promise to be able to fight Ling Feng. After the fight was over, then it was Ling Feng's turn to fight Zhang Sui. In this match, Zhang Sui looked different from before because she was much stronger and used weapons. So here Ling Feng has to be careful, remembering in the last match even though Ling Feng managed to beat him, but he received quite severe injuries on the inside. And in this match, Zhang Sui is determined to take revenge for his first defeat. Before long the battle began, where Zhang Sui aggressively attacked Ling Feng's manipulative attacks. Meanwhile, for the time being, Ling Feng held on while looking for a loophole to turn things around. Until one day Zhang Sui was angry and showed his true strength when a large rock appeared raining down on Ling Feng. But the attack was repulsed by the 1,000 punches that Ling Feng threw to stop the boulder. After a long time looking for an opening, Ling Feng finally found Zhang Sui's weak point and carried out his signature attack, which, with the hard blow of his stick for the second time, did Ling Feng manage to defeat Zhang Sui. Even though he lost, Zhang Sui smiled because from the start, she had suspected that Ling Feng was a strong and invincible person. At the end of the fight, Ling Feng tells Zhang Sui that he is really strong, but it's a shame your opponent is me. Everyone cheered for Ling Feng's victory, saying that the legendary Iron Scepter was indeed formidable. Then while shaking hands, Ling Feng said that Zhang Sui had grown great. Ling Feng gave the Iron Scepter as a gift. But Zhang Sui refused on the grounds that the scepter really suited Ling Feng's nickname. Some among the top 8 participants were wary of Ling Feng's strength because he would be a very difficult opponent later on. They had also just realized that Ling Feng was a true martial master. Continue on the 6th day, Dugu vs Sun Tian. The moment the match started, instantly Sun Tian immediately used his speed to charge toward Dugu. Dugu still didn't move and played his instrument as assault. The attack that Dugu launched was successfully cut down by Sun Tian. Even he could get closer to the place from Dugu. Dugu immediately used high-level techniques to put some distance between them. Sun Tian unleashed a powerful tornado and knocked Dugu into a corner. It was finally because of that Dugu finally started to stand up and use his severity power. After exhaling Dugu's breath directly used heaven-grade skill, Yuan Link. The loot scratches released a very strong aura ready to tear its prey. Being in the position Sun Tian also not to be outdone, he used his strongest technique to end the fight here. To his surprise, the attack was penetrated easily by Dugu's technique. Not only that, Soul Song Tier 2's chaotic attack managed to break through Sun Tian's defense until it was blown out of the arena. Consequences of exiting the arena. According to the battle, the winner in today's match is Dugu. From a distance, Ling Feng, who saw it, was deeply impressed by Dugu's ability. He said that she really deserved to be the #1 disciple. The other participants also thought so. They didn't expect that Dugu could really pass to the next round. Now it's Like Xuan versus Lang Zu's turn. This was a very interesting match. Old immortal Like Xuan immediately opened an attack with his lucky arrow, but quickly Lang Zu sped up and easily dodged the attack. Not only did Lang Zu dodge it, but it could also turn the arrow toward Like Xuan. Of course, seeing that his attack was countered so easily, Like Xuan, who was provoked by Lang Zu's words, immediately attacked using his strongest Tier 1 attack, Remnant Arrow. The bow with a green aura emitting enormously shot out from the arrow towards Lang Zu's direction. Instantly the huge arrow exploded and covered the area there. Then surprisingly from behind her, Lang Zu thrust his sword toward Like Xuan's neck. She was surprised that he didn't dodge the attack because that's why when there was smoke, he lost his track and now Lang Zu could be behind her. Because he couldn't move anymore, Like Xuan finally gave up, so Lang Zu passed the next round. Before leaving the arena, Lang Zu said that if I don't fight seriously then I will lose, therefore he can win the fight. The next round was Shui's match against Lai Ju. Without further ado, Lai Ju immediately used the Dipper Slash technique at Shui's direction. Shui, who previously knew of this technique, easily dodged and jumped to counterattack with that spear. A huge explosion occurred in the arena. Luckily Lai Ju managed to dodge the attack and now he will break through to the next level, namely demi-martial spirit, to be able to fight against Shui. By being at this level, he had become the strongest fighter in Lingwu. Lai Ju immediately swung his sword and sent Shui flying backward. After doing that, he immediately jumps up with a very powerful strike to end this fight. But Lai Ju was surprisingly blown away by some strange power. It turned out to be a trump card hidden by Shui. Even here, it can be seen that his level is demi-martial spirit. Of course, seeing that Lai Ju immediately released a huge aura and focused the aura into his sword to cut down Shui. It seems that Shui can match his strength and speed, so it looks like the fight is so even. In the end, Lai Ju, who was cornered, had to forcefully use pills to break through to the next level. With Lai Ju's extremely fiery aura now having reached the combat soul level, this meant that his level was already very different from Shui, who was still below him. Lai Ju explained that this was the right time to show off because previously he had been preparing for a long time. Realizing that the strength of the opponent was very different, Shui willy-nilly had to finish this match with his hidden technique, namely the Heaven Grade. Then the two of them fought an attack that was so big that it shook this big arena. The intense pressure between them was palpable, but Lai Ju was surprisingly unable to match Shui's Heaven Grade skill. As a result, the attack penetrated his chest and he could not continue the fight. Shui explained that although his level is combat soul level, his experience is only a little. Even if he gives 10 chances, the probability of Lai Ju's victory is only a few percent. The next battle is Ling Feng against Long Hao. This battle is no less interesting than Shui and Lai Ju, because previously, Long Hao with just 3 attacks could win the match. Then everyone immediately made the debate. Is Ling Feng able to fight Long Hao? As usual, Ling Feng, who got a bit of a sneer, immediately broke the atmosphere by provoking Long Hao. Receiving such insults enraged Long Hao and would end him with that death blow. When throwing punches, it had a fiery red aura. Surprisingly, Ling Feng was able to block it several times with ease. Ling Feng provoked Long Hao again to use his axe. Because Ling Feng wanted it happily, Long Hao used his axe to attack. On the other hand, Ling Feng would also use his iron to fight. A huge clash broke out between them. Even the axe slashes almost there hit Ling Feng. Realizing that the enemy possessed formidable strength, Ling Feng immediately displayed the strength of a level 5 combat master. A dark green aura appeared in his hand and immediately launched the Dragon Flame Sword skill. This attack succeeded in destroying Long Hao's amazing skill, but Ling Feng's skill was truly deadly. As a result, the attack left Long Hao seriously injured. Even though his body was heavily injured, Long Hao revived again and emitted an enormous aura, intimidating everyone present. He swung the axe erratically, but Ling Feng was able to block it several times, and it seems that this time Ling Feng was pressured by the attack. Then to end, Ling Feng displayed a spirit grade skill, the Soul Engulfing skill. The yellow light swiftly pierced through Long Hao's super strong axe. Unexpectedly, the attack reached Long Hao's body, thus he couldn't continue fighting any longer and fell into a faint. So Ling Feng can advance to the semi-finals. Wang Yu, who saw that technique, felt shocked and realized that the person he was fighting in the wasteland was Ling Feng. But he still couldn't imagine that the strength was so different from before. Everyone immediately cheered for Ling Feng's victory, because he was really crazy to beat the strongest person. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Shui hopes that Ling Feng's strength is not only this. If it is, that I will be disappointed. Furthermore, it was announced who would fight in the semifinals. This time, the first match was Du Gu against Lang Zhu, or Cold Blood. As for Shui's final fight against Ling Feng, the story continues from the semifinal begins, where Du Gu fights Cold Blood. As expected, women, they were both very powerful. In the beginning, Cold Blood immediately used the Earth skill Insane Sword, while Du Gu also used his ability called Soul Disturbing Music. The first clash of attacks was intense, but the two were evenly matched. Then the two Cold Bloods counterattacked and immediately closed in. Unfortunately, Du Gu has a much stronger ability called Skeleton Blood. There appeared a skull aura that made Cold Blood hurt when it approached. And at the end, before the attack hit Du Gu, Cold Blood had to fall and Du Gu advanced to the finals. Meanwhile, on Du Gu's side, although he won, he was also seriously injured, because she didn't expect Cold Blood to have such a powerful attack that it made him vomit blood. Meanwhile, before starting the semifinal match, Ling Feng met Du Gu and gave him a healing pie. Then not long after, the semifinals between Ling Feng and Shui Ling Long started. As it was thought from the start they were merciless and attacked each other, it can be seen from the several attacks that each carried out that did not have much difference in strength. One day, finally Shui Ling Long got angry and took out his true abilities. Where would he use weapons against Ling Feng? While Ling Feng, who did not want to lose, also used his reliable iron to stop Shui Ling Long's attack. But here it seems that the strong attack launched by Shui Ling Long managed to crack his iron staff. Seeing this, Shui Ling Long smiled and said, "You can't fight anymore without a weapon." With a smile, Ling Feng also said so, and surprisingly suddenly Ling Feng succeeded in destroying Shui Ling Long's weapon in an instant. But it turns out that the weapon was just a replica, because if the weapon is destroyed, then the shape of the original weapon will be seen. Even so, Ling Feng was not afraid in the slightest and launched a powerful attack that severely injured Shui Linglong. But apparently, it wasn't over yet, because it turned out that Shui Linglong still had hidden abilities. And it turned out that his original realm was now the Soul Combat realm. While the spectators, including Dan's supporter Ling Feng, were speechless as their realm was at a distant level, they were a bit pessimistic that Ling Feng couldn't win against Shui Linglong, as they had expected the attack Shui Linglong had launched in the Combat Soul realm was strong enough to seriously injure Ling Feng. But even so, this did not make Ling Feng give up and will use his flagship move, where is his mainstay ability called Spirit Incineration Sword, where suddenly 2 fireballs appeared from Ling Feng's hands and immediately threw them at Shui Linglong. It's a shame that even though this was Ling Feng's mainstay of combat, the attack was successfully broken and Shui Linglong managed to land an attack that left a hole in one hand. But at the same time, suddenly a small but deadly attack was right in front of Shui Linglong's eyes. What turned out to be the ability of the fireball just now was just a diversion, because the main attack was a small fire that had been in front of him. In this way, Shui Linglong finally gave up and lost, remembering that if he continues, the wound that Kaken will receive is quite severe. After the semifinals are completed, then the finals will begin soon, where Ling Feng will fight Dugu. Meanwhile, the Spirit Elder who saw this was very happy and was about to ask Ling Feng to become his disciple. However, this was not allowed by Master Yun Meng and would lead Ling Feng to flee from there. Teacher Yun Meng said that Ling Feng resigned. Knowing this, the Spirit Elder was astonished. Meanwhile, Master also couldn't say much because it was Ling Feng's decision. And as a result, because Ling Feng withdrew, Dugu would become the victor in the annual Moling competition. Meanwhile, on Ling Feng's side, he still wanted to fight, but since it was Teacher Yu Meng's decision, he would follow him. While the elders of the Spirit Warriors still wanted to recruit Ling Feng as their apprentice, it was denied by Master Yu Meng that Ling Feng would become Ling Wu's apprentice and would become the Master Alchemist here. Now, because of several problems that occurred, Ling Feng finally spoke that for now, he doesn't want to master Spirit. But one day if he wants to learn it, then he will meet him. Hearing that, the Elder Spirit Warrior was very happy and would be waiting for him. After the matter was over, the Master asked Ling Feng how he got the Heaven Dance Spirit ability. Here Ling Feng explains that he obtained this ability in a cave that was said to have evil monsters inside, where after defeating the Blood Beast he managed to gain new abilities and learn several things there. In addition, the Master also informed me that 2 weeks later the Holy Flame would be opened. Holy Flame itself is a place where one can improve themselves by defeating beasts in a limited time. But unfortunately, only a certain number of disciples can go there, which meant Ling Feng couldn't keep up with the hunt. However, here Ling Feng still insisted on going there, and here he was offering some earth pill recipes to Master if he would allow himself to join the hunt in the Holy Flame land. It was late at night due to the 2 weeks of hunting in the Holy Fake lands. Ling Feng finally called King here to take care of his older sister, but this was not enough. For that, Ling Feng would give King and the Lion the Golden Stone so they could upgrade their realms. Meanwhile, Ling King will be taught high-grade heaven skills. In the next 2 weeks, finally, the gate to the Holy Flame has been opened, where there were seen several academy elders come there to accompany some of their best students to hone their strength in that place. And some of the disciples who were going to the Holy Flame were Dugu, Mukong, and Ling King. And it turns out that Ling Feng is not allowed to come, but because Ling Feng is stubborn, he secretly follows and will go alone and not follow their crowd. Suddenly Ling Feng was teleported to a reservoir, and in the middle of it was a very powerful red bird monster. Meanwhile, the red bird monster saw someone in its territory defending itself. However, Ling Feng easily managed to beat back. Feeling belittled, the red bird attacked again with a flash of lightning from its wings. Unfortunately, his attack failed because Ling Feng managed to catch the red bird. And when he looked closely, Ling Feng was surprised to find that his attack had no effect because this red bird was wearing holy armor. And from some of the data that was read earlier, these holy clothes entered the level of the Holy King Spirit. Knowing this, of course, Ling Feng intends to take the sacred clothes from the red bird. Then, because the red bird did not accept it, the bird released a very large fireball ability called For Sun Flame Fire. Instead of dodging, Ling Feng caught it and made the attack his ability. But it turns out that taming this ability is not easy, especially since the effect of the attack hurts his inner body. While in this state, the red bird launched another attack to cancel Ling Feng from taking his ability. In this state, Ling Feng was completely cornered, but at least he managed to take down the crimson bird so that it would not interfere with taming the For Sun Flame Fire. Not long after struggling with the attack for a long time, Ling Feng finally managed to master it. When the bird saw that Ling Feng managed to master it, immediately fled from this area, because he didn't want his clothes to be taken by him. It's a shame what the bird did was just in vain, because quickly Ling Feng succeeded in front of him and carried out an attack to overthrow the red bird. However, even in a difficult condition, the Red Bird did not let his sacred clothes be taken away. Seeing this, Ling Feng got angry and made a final attack which succeeded in making the surrendering bird surrender. But it turned out to be a lie because the Red Bird was looking for a gap to escape, and because Ling Feng was off guard, the weak bird finally managed to escape. But unexpectedly, Ling Feng was in front of Nei and could fly. Knowing this, the Red Bird was shocked, and why can a human being fly? Ling Feng explained that he wasn't flying but he was treading on a flying leaf, so he could hover as if he were flying. As a result, with all that, finally, the Red Bird gave up because he could no longer run away. However, when he went to meet the bird, suddenly from behind several bandits attacked him. The bandit said that this herb garden was ours, so anyone who sets foot here is our enemy. Knowing this, Ling Feng apologized and immediately left, but it was from behind that person attacked him. Luckily, with his current skills, he was able to avoid them. Then Ling Feng asked the Red Bird to cooperate because there was no way he could defeat the 3 bandits. There would be a battle where the Scarlet Bird would fight 2 low-level bandits and Ling Feng would fight the boss of the bandits. We'll see if Red Bird can take down both low-level bandits in an instant. Whereas Ling Feng looked troubled because the bandit realm was higher than himself. Finally, because of the difference in levels, the bandit boss managed to break one of Ling Feng's arms. As usual, even though his one hand was badly injured here, Ling Feng was still able to fight the bandit in balance. It can be seen that even here Ling Feng managed to keep up with him, but with his current condition, it was impossible to beat the bandit boss. But finally, the conditions turned around when the Red Bird helped him fight. And soon, thanks to their combination, the 2 of them finally succeeded in overthrowing the bandit boss. Then after that, Ling Feng took the overpower bowl that was brought by the bandit boss, where the ability of this bowl can reflect attacks and can make the attack multiply. Apart from that, Ling Feng also obtained a storage item. Upon hearing that Ling Feng and the bird would buy this herb garden in half. With the storage ring, the 2 of them would harvest the herbs there and split the loot equally. Because they are so happy to harvest herbs here, they are exhausted. And not far away, several holy flame beasts flocked and came towards Ling Feng and the Crimson Bird. Seeing this, Ling Feng was very frightened because the realm of the monster level was very far away. Moreover, there were so many of them. But even so, they managed to strike back and defeat all the beasts. Now, because of the serious injuries received due to the battle, Ling Feng prepared several bottles of healing to treat himself. However, before Ling Feng drank the healing bottle, the Red Bird suddenly betrayed and intended to marry him. It seems that this Red Bird still can't accept it and will fight and take some of the items brought by Ling Feng. It's a shame what he did only put the Red Bird in danger, because from the start Ling Feng had already realized that, so to keep the Red Bird from attacking, he had already prepared an item to subvert it. And as a result, the bird lost again and became a prisoner of Ling Feng. And maybe because here Ling Feng is fed up with the Red Bird, he asks to give him the holy clothes. If he refuses, then he will burn them for dinner. Here the frightened Red Bird finally told him that he could not give the sacred clothes because it was embedded and could not be removed. Even if he was killed, the sacred clothes would also disappear. Knowing that explanation, finally, Ling Feng asked the others and asked the Red Bird to find a treasured place of high value. The panel moves to a place in the meadow, where 3 people who look badly injured are carrying bottles of Dew Aura. It was said that the Aura Dew bottle could heal wounds but also increase strength. However, before the 3 people drank the healing medicine, they were suddenly attacked by Ling Feng and the Red Bird. Of course here, Ling Feng will take the medicine to drink, considering that his body is now seriously injured. Apart from that, Ling Feng also gives medicine to the bird so that it can recover from its wounds, considering that now the bird is his pet. But again, the bird's hilarious behavior happened. After drinking the Dew Aura, he became strong and intended to attack Ling Feng. Unfortunately, Ling Feng also grew stronger, and as a result, the bird was beaten up. Furthermore, after the fight for so long, they continued their journey, where they headed to a treasure vault that was only open once a few months. When they were there, the 2 of them sneaked into it, but it seemed that everyone gathered in the boring library, because in their first life, Ling Feng had read all the books in this library. But the main goal is not here but at the peak of this sacred love, where the Red Bird tells there is a storage of rare and expensive weapons. When he got there, it turned out that 2 people were injured. It seems that the 2 people were injured because they were doing battle, and this condition was used by Ling Feng to beat them up, because this was a past moment, considering that the 2 people were in a different realm from him. So this condition is very past to fight them. The story still focuses on the fight between Ling Feng and the 2 youths from the Sidu family. One of the disciples instantly used his ultimate technique to kill Ling Feng, and that annoying the Red Bird. As a result of the Dark Palm technique, the Red Bird was easily defeated, but Ling Feng was not. He immediately used an attack from a strange object which caused the person to bounce off. Then from behind, the Red Bird immediately hit the young man and immediately fainted. Seeing that Ling Feng managed to defeat 2 members of the Sidu Kong family, the person who gave Ling Feng the mission immediately thanked him. He said that there would be many gifts for him. With an evil glare, Ling Feng and the Red Bird immediately beat the person to take all of his possessions and of course the property of the Sidukong family. With great joy, Ling Feng and the Red Bird immediately took all the treasures in the castle. Even though there were some items that were less valuable, Ling Feng still took them and was going to sell them later. Then while walking down the hall, Ling Feng found a strange stone that had level 9. Without thinking, Ling Feng immediately tried to take it, but to his surprise, the stone had a mass of 1,500 kilograms. The crazier thing is that the more you lift the stone, the heavier it gets. However, Ling Feng managed to get this stone. Later it will be used for certain occasions. With pleasure mixed with joy, the two of them headed to the third temple. Elsewhere there are two young men who failed to find the precious treasure in the second temple, so they hoped to get the precious treasure in this third castle. When they arrived at the entrance, the two of them were immediately stopped by the guard. The guard said that if the young master of the Lang family is inside, then leave if you don't want to die. Suddenly hearing that made the two of them immediately panic because Lang was a cultivation high level. Not only that the Lang family is at a position higher than the 8 families, so fighting this person is tantamount to suicide. Then from behind, Ling Feng immediately cut off the conversation between the two of them. He said whether the Lang family could go against the rest of the world, the sacred temple's inheritance depended on talent, not identity. He did this in order to provoke the guard into anger, and in the end, the plan worked and Ling Feng was beaten until he was knocked quite far from that place. Here Ling Feng pretended to be weak. Lang Rong walked out of the castle. Because of the lecture, two young men were previously determined to take the treasure from this castle. Before entering the castle, they both have to pass through a barrier first. Upon approaching the barrier and thrusting a hand into the barrier, his hand was surprisingly injured. But surprisingly, some people who are after treasure can enter the portal. There was nothing inside, which made the treasure hunters confused. And surprisingly, the Red Bird from Ling Feng immediately beat up the treasure hunters. And when you look at it in more detail, it turns out that it was all a trap from Ling Feng. Meanwhile, Ling Feng was laughing with joy looking at all the battered treasure hunters, and yet no one realized that it was a trap from Ling Feng alone. Not long after, finally, Lang Rong appeared from a different door. Immediately, the white-haired youth immediately panicked because the aura from this Lang was very terrible. When he saw chaos here, Lang was surprised who killed his servant. The white-haired youth firmly replied that it was he who killed the servant. Even though at first they already knew the limit of what kind of strength Lang was, the white-haired youth had no choice but to fight. He immediately ordered everyone on his side to attack Lang. Of course, Lang directly pointed out the inheritance he had acquired. What will be shown this time is the level up skill. Lang direct used the slash that emerged from his hand to crazily hit the treasure hunters. Surprisingly, everyone who challenged him at that time was immediately defeated by all of them. After seeing Lang's power level, the Red Bird realized that Lang was probably already at the near combat king level. Hearing this, Ling Feng was also not surprised, and he realized that his current level would probably be hard-pressed to beat that person. Then, not wanting to waste his precious pills, Ling Feng immediately ate all of them. Then finally Lang realized that there was still one more person who was still alive and was now playing dead. Upon discovering this, V immediately rushed to use his skill to leave this place. But it's a pity that Lang easily caught up with him. At that time, Ling Feng immediately pushed away Lang with his fist. And it's true that Lang was immediately blown away. Far enough. He praised the strength of Ling Feng, who could use Taijutsu. Lang asked him how to train the body to such an extent. If Ling Feng deigns to tell him, then I promise not to kill you. From the description, Ling Feng realized that this person was truly strong. So getting out of here is very difficult and you might get seriously injured. The next attack from Lang was also very strong. At that time it was Ling Feng who tried to block it with his spiritual skill, but his strength was not strong enough to withstand the fierceness of the attack. As a result, Ling Feng was seriously injured and asked Rooster to help him fight. The Crimson Bird, without thinking about Ling Feng, immediately left the place. Feeling betrayed by Ling Feng immediately mentioning where the Red Bird came from, it turned out that the Red Bird was from the Rosefinch clan. Immediately hearing that, Lang was very interested and wanted to make him a pet. Without further ado, Lang directly aimed at the Red Bird with the armor of his sex heritage. It was clear that the Red Bird didn't want Lang to keep him as a pet. He immediately ran fast to escape Lang's target. Seeing that situation, Ling Feng hurried to leave quietly. It seemed that because the bird didn't want to be alone, he immediately approached Ling Feng to help him get away from this person's pursuit. Because it's like this, like it or not, Ling Feng and the Red Bird must be able to defeat Lang. Otherwise, there is no other way to get out of this castle. Then Ling Feng directly used the Phoenix Dagger and Incineration Sword combo attack toward the enemy. Meanwhile, Lang also doesn't want to be outdone by using the Silver Moon Wheel skill. Ling Feng's attack was easily torn apart with that technique. Then Ling Feng gave Ling Feng one more choice, but he rejected it and provoked him again to come closer. After Lang drew near, Ling Feng immediately used his spiritual strength. The skill this time was very strong. From his head a very strong light appeared on Lang. However, if you look at this picture, it is clear that Lang can block the attack from Ling Feng with the purple weapon. Lang's anger was finally uncontrollable and now he would kill Ling Feng no matter what. Lang immediately cast a very powerful technique, with this fist able to throw Ling Feng to hit the big rocks there. Seen there, Ling Feng is helpless and looks ridiculous. Not only was Ling Feng dropped by the Marrying Bird, but he also managed to be paralyzed by his various powerful skills. Let's move on from Ling Feng's side first. At this time, he still looks weak and feels pain in his stomach. But the good news here is that if it weren't for this golden body, then surely if he was hit by an attack like that, he would lose. Then Ling Feng thought of a way to break through this boundary of his body with the few pills he ate before. Right now he was trying really hard to break through to the next level to break through my boundary. After the aura exploded, Ling Feng was now at the combat soul level. But even so, his level is still 8 levels different from Lang. In fact, Ling Feng already knew this, because the goal of breaking through this level was to be able to increase his running speed. However, when going through this place, surprisingly there was a big wave that covered the road. This powerful and deadly wave belongs to Lang. Lang said with this barrier then Ling Feng could no longer escape. Realizing that he couldn't get out of this place, Ling Feng intended to give gifts to Lang. Of course, Lang could no longer believe his words, but somehow suddenly Ling Feng threw something at him. And what Ling Feng threw was a stone that he previously found in the second castle. After being thrown, the stone became bigger and bigger. Lang, who saw that, couldn't do anything else. Too bad he didn't practice the power of Taijutsu, so it was impossible to deal with this boulder. Then with all his strength, Ling Feng immediately dropped a 27,500 stones on Lang's head. Seeing that made the Red Bird wonder how Ling Feng could come up with such an idea. But it wasn't long before Ling Feng fell to the ground after his energy was drained a lot. Now I'm really tired and need pills to heal the wound. Even though he was injured like that, Ling Feng was still able to stand. This time he immediately took Lang's purple weapon. This purple colored stone is a very powerful weapon, and it will be worth losing the precious stone. Next, since Lang has been defeated, we must now take all of his possessions. Scene changes to the third castle, where several members of the white-haired people are confused as to what happened here and who took all the treasures in this castle. The white-haired young man even said that all the treasure had been taken by Lang, even though we already know that the mastermind behind all this was Ling Feng. With this thing, everything will be blamed on Lang Wukong. After plundering all the treasures in the castle, Ling Feng was visited by the Cyan Bird from Ling King. Knowing that only the Cyan Bird was coming, Ling Feng was very surprised at what actually happened to Ling King. Then the Cyan Bird explained what happened earlier. After parting ways with Ling Feng, Ling Qin arrived at a place that was suspected to be the Holy Flame. That place was so beautiful. The big problem started after the arrival of one of the youths from the Cao family. The youth tried to seduce Ling King and intended to make him a servant. Luckily, all of that was stopped by Du Gu, who immediately made the boy battered. Even though Du Gu already knew the risks of being dealt with by the Cao family, he didn't want fellow fellowships to be treated like that. After being battered by the girl, the young man from the Cao family immediately went and asked for help from the other disciples to teach Ling King and Du Gu a lesson. Starting from there, their journey became arduous because several disciples from the Cao family started hunting for it for several days. As a result, all the pills that had been brought were gone, and now they couldn't heal the wound. As there was no way to escape the Cao family's pursuit, Du Gu advised Ling King to leave him in this place by using the Cyan Bird. But Ling King could not leave Du Gu. Then she asked the Cyan Bird to tell Ling Feng about this incident. That was the origin of why only the Cyan Bird came to Ling Feng. When hearing that from the bird, Ling Feng's anger boiled over, his aura became even bigger, and he said that I will kill all of the Cao family no matter what. Of course, the Crimson Bird stopped Ling Feng because the entire Cao family had average combat soul level disciples. Beating them head-on was simply suicide. If you want to kill all of them, then Ling Feng will have to kill them one by one without being caught. That was all Ling Feng could do this time. Uncontrollable emotions could not make Ling Feng think clearly. What he was thinking right now was that he needed strength greater than his current strength. His current choice was only on the reversing skill. This skill can strengthen itself in just a few moments, but the side effects are very deadly, namely that he might die after using this power. Without thinking about the side effects, Ling Feng immediately activated the skill. The aura within his body was now getting bigger and crazier. His current level had already reached the 9th level. The eyes of Ling Feng looked like a bloodthirsty demon ready to devour its prey. Whereas the place where Ling King and Du Gu were cornered and there was no escape from this cliff, what awaited them now was only death. To make matters worse, they had been surrounded by a few disciples from the Cao family. Despite having no chance of winning, Du Gu still tries to attack them all with his remaining strength. Because his energy was almost depleted, some of the techniques Du Gu threw out could easily be destroyed by that disciple. Even Du Gu was seriously injured from a punch from one of the youths there. Because he was no longer able to hold back all of this, Du Gu intended to end his life like that. Later, Ling Feng would take his revenge on all the disciples of the Cao family. Before he could do that, luckily, Ling Feng was here quickly thanks to Ling's purple weapon, which now belongs to him. From above, Ling Feng with his demon eye mode directly slaughtered one of the youths there with his youth. And seeing Ling King and Du Gu get hurt like that made Ling Feng go crazy again. On the other hand, the disciples of the Cao family noticed that the opponent was now above their level, but Ling Feng was alone. So they directly attacked Ling Feng simultaneously without the slightest hesitation. But Ling Feng easily sped up and slaughtered the youths one by one. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 disciples have been defeated. With all of that, finally, the situation became calm again. Ling Feng went straight to Ling King to give him the remedial medicine. Ling Feng said to leave everything to me. I will kill all the disciples of the Cao family who are in the castle. Before leaving, Ling Feng asked the Red Bird to look after Ling King and Du Gu. It didn't take long for Ling Feng to go straight to the Cao family base, and there were 40 disciples on alert. However, from above, Ling Feng directly dropped the previous boulder onto that spot. As a result of the fall of such a heavy stone that day, 58 disciples in the secret land of the Holy Flame who was fond of committing crimes were killed by Ling Feng. The story starts with the commotion made by Ling Feng. Not long after Ling Feng killed all the disciples of the Cao family, the news spread throughout the entire sect. However, the name of the killer is unknown. Even so, all the sects began to be wary of these monsters because they might also be targeted just like the Cao family and Lang Rukong. Sin changed to the Holy Flame land. After clearing things up, Ling Feng went straight to Ling King and Du Gu who were resting. Ling Feng said now we have to find a place to hide first, but suddenly he immediately fell down and felt extreme fear. Of course, Ling King and Du Gu panicked because she didn't know what had happened to Ling Feng. The Red Bird explains that this is a side effect of using the reversing skill, thus making the passage broken. Of course, this is a bad thing. Passages cannot be restored through external assistance if the flow has been reversed. Then suddenly Ling Feng vomited a lot of blood, which made Ling King and Du Gu scared because Ling Feng was really on the verge of death. While crying, Ling King hugged Ling Feng and said that he would be fine. Then slowly the energy started to disappear from his body and the heart of Ling Feng started to stop. Immediately, Ling King and Du Gu, who couldn't do anything, could only cry over Ling Feng's departure. Then all of a sudden we were immediately diverted to a very quiet place in the glowing yellow waters. Somehow suddenly at that place, there was Ling Feng who was lying limp there. And to his surprise, Ling Feng wasn't dead yet. He was able to wake up and was shocked by his current condition. I should have died, so why could I be in this place? After some thought, Ling Feng realized that this place was the posthumous world. This was Ling Feng's Sea of Souls. This ocean is known as Super Water. Ling Feng wondered, am I still alive? Then Ling Feng realized that this super water had many magical effects. If he bathed here, then this super water could save him. On the other hand, Ling King still could not accept the death of his younger brother. She always hugs Ling Feng so he can come back to life. At that sadness, suddenly, from Ling Feng's body, a very strong aura appeared, blowing them both away. Suddenly, Ling Feng meditated with an extremely strong aura in the area. Seeing Ling Feng still standing like that made Ling King feel very happy and tried to touch him, but the aura was extremely strong and could make Ling King hurt. Meanwhile, the Red Bird was very surprised by this incident because suddenly Ling Feng was able to recover himself. According to the 3000 Holly Mount scrolls, all those who have died cannot cultivate after using a reversing skill. But with his own eyes, the Red Bird saw for himself that the passages from Ling Feng could come back again even if in a different form, or you could say transformation. Ling Feng himself had just realized in his heart that this skill wasn't forbidden, but instead, it was a technique that renovated passages. This means that all levels owned by Ling Feng have disappeared and started all over again. Then to restore all those levels, Ling Feng must attack Kai more and more from this place. Seeing that Ling King and the others also tried to break through to the next level. After a full day of meditation, Ling King rises to the 9th level of Combat Master, while Du Gu is now at the 4th level of the Combat Soul. After all the levels have increased, they are surprised when Ling Feng is back to normal and is doing ridiculous things like before. His current level is still at the Combat Soul level 4. Feeling that all conditions have improved, Ling Feng tells everyone not to wander alone, because from here the enemy will target all of us. So for that, Ling Feng asked Du Gu and Ling King to train to get stronger. Meanwhile, Ling Feng would make pills and re-enhance the spirit level alchemist first. Hearing this, the Crimson Bird was very surprised because Ling Feng was an expert in all fields. It didn't take long for Ling Feng to make a purple pill to break through to the spirit level. The Crimson Bird asked Ling Feng to make aura-boosting pills so that way they could become strong quickly. The Red Bird immediately looked for the material so that Ling Feng could directly make it. Shortly after the Crimson Bird came back, Ling Feng had surprisingly produced about 15 kinds of high-grade pills. Finding this precious item, the Red Bird said that pill can be sold at the auction, which will last for several days, so they can get a lot of money. Hearing the word currency from Ling Feng immediately described currency, and he intended to make more to sell in the auction. A few days later, Ling Feng and the bird arrived at the secret land of Huo City's holy flame. Meanwhile, Ling King and Du Gu will be looking for lodging in this city. Arriving at the auction, Ling Feng was stopped by the guard there, but after Ling Feng said that he was selling pills there, finally Ling Feng was invited to enter. As usual, Ling Feng was initially underestimated by the owner of the auction, Su Xiaoru. Ling Feng asks Xiaoru to buy all these pills. After Ling Feng looked at the pill, she was very surprised because all of these pills were peak spirit grade. Xiaoru thought that this young man had dug up an alchemist's grave. But after Ling Feng reveals that he is the maker, makes Xiaoru is shocked. At first, Xiaoru tried to tempt Ling Feng into giving a low price, but after seeing the boy's aura she couldn't move and agreed to the deal. To mark this agreement, Xiaoru gave a token as a sign that they had worked together. 2 days later the grand auction begins. After the officer took out all the pills in the city, making all the auction participants felt surprised at how could these peak level pills be traded. Without thinking, all the participants immediately gave high marks for the pill, and the pill finally sold for 20,000 herbs. Of course, seeing that in person made Ling Feng twinkle because earning that much money didn't take long. Not only that, in the second sale and when the total revenue Ling Feng generated reached 300,000 aura herbs, which was a great accomplishment for Ling Feng after living like this for so long. After getting the money, he intends to make more pills in the future. Then in the last event, we are shown the last item that is so valuable. The item is the bone of the holy beast. This item can increase the strength of up to 1 to 2 fighters. Of course, seeing that Ling Feng intends to buy it because with this item he can make the next high-level pill. Because this item is very rare, many participants mentioned the price is up to 120,000 herbal aura. The Marang bird immediately told Ling Feng to buy the item for 130,000 herbs. But unexpectedly, Ling Feng gave 300,000 aura herbs instead. That way no one can beat that price, that way the item officially belongs to Ling Feng. But the auction money he got before was gone. Of course, at the end, he was scolded by Du Gu and Ling King, but they couldn't do anything about it because it all belonged to Ling Feng. Then Ling Feng asked the red bird to inhale the fragrance from the bone in order to break through to the next level. Then Ling Feng would concoct high-grade pills. Slowly he started making the pill with the parts of the holy beast. The results of making it produce pills that are extraordinarily strong, namely near earth level. Of course, Ling King and Du Gu couldn't say a word seeing this, because Ling Feng was indeed a genius. 3 days later Ling Feng immediately sold it to Xiaoru. Even though it was only 3 days, Ling Feng asked Xiaoru to sell it for 200,000 herbs. Of course, hearing that made Xiaoru surprised. How could he create a pill grade like this? Auction day had started, but the one who was going to directly sell the pills from Ling Feng was she herself. Seeing that, everyone was confused and wondered if that item was that special. When Xiaoru showed this pill, many famous families immediately flocked to buy it at a high price. One of the immediate family called lift 500,000 and 700,000. But finally, this pill was sold with 1,500,000 aura herbs. This figure was unbelievably high and made Ling Feng cry in tears because he did not expect that the pills he had made could sell at such a high price. After the auction ends, Xiaoru tempts Ling Feng to give him another good item. Ling Feng, who feels tempted, ends up selling some of the books that he found in the holy temple. But in return, she had to provide earth-level aura herbs. Finishing from that place, Ling Feng noticed that there were people watching him from a while ago. Ling Feng directly asked that person to show himself. It turned out that he was the director of the auction house of Huo City, Su Yun. On the other hand, Xiaoru found out that Su Yun had chased after Ling Feng. Xiaoru was restless because if Ling Feng was annoyed with that person, then it would affect Xiaoru and the Su family. What Xiaoru was afraid of was that Ling Feng was a very strong person, so Su Yun was currently in a dangerous state. And Su Yun himself had no idea how strong Ling Feng was now. Back at Ling Feng's side, he presented Su Yun with an extremely attractive offer. Su Yun asked Ling Feng to come to Flame City and would make him richer. But Ling Feng immediately rejected him on the grounds that he was not interested in the city. Receiving this humiliation enraged Su Yun and had to use force to persuade Ling Feng. A huge battle between them happened, and a huge clash of flames took place in that place. Su Yun also intended to take the technique from Ling Feng no matter what. Of course, Su Yun is very confident, because his level is near Combat King. It didn't take long for Su Yun to immediately use his strength to hunt down Ling Feng. But Ling Feng realized that there were some techniques he couldn't perform, so quickly Ling Feng used his spiritual strength to end the fight. Then with just one technique, Su Yun was instantly killed. It wasn't long after that Su Yun's corpse was brought to Xiaoru's place. She was shocked because Sun's death was due to spiritual power. She didn't expect that Ling Feng also had such a technique. Of course, with this she must be good to Ling Feng, otherwise then everything will be finished here. The next day Ling Feng sent the Red Bird to meet Xiaoru. The weaver threatened Xiaoru not to follow Ling Feng anymore, otherwise Ling Feng would end the auction house of Fire City and Flame City. Of course, actually, this is not an order from Ling Feng, but this is advice from the Red Bird so that Xiaoru doesn't mess with Ling Feng. In 10 days Ling Feng again refined high-grade pills. He finally refined his first-grade earth pills. This would be an interesting item to sell at auction. Seen at the auction house, Xiaoru and the other officers looked limp and waited for Ling Feng's arrival. Then when Ling Feng was here, she was very happy and immediately hugged him. When Ling Feng showed the pills this time, Xiaoru was impressed and couldn't hold back the aura from the high-grade pills. Xiaoru said that with this item then this auction house would be her first record, and she intended to make Ling Feng the mascot of the auction. Auction day has started again. Now many of the 8 prominent families attended this auction, and they hoped to find something better than the previous auction. When entering the auction, all participants were very surprised because there were so many guards there. The Guardian banned persons at the near combat king level and above from entering the auction. This is done so that there is no commotion at the auction. Then we are shown someone who is angry and intends to avenge the death of his father, none other than he named Su Hao. Su Hao intends to find out who was behind his father's murder. Then one by one Xiaoru took out 6th grade combat king grade pills, and the pills quickly sold for 100,000 earth grade herbs. After a break Xiaoru surprised everyone again by taking out grade 7 and 8 pills. The total revenue Ling Feng earned was 450,000 earth grade herbs. Of course, because everything has been fulfilled, Ling Feng intends to travel to other islands. The Red Bird said that Ling King and Dugu had already set a trap, so we won't have any trouble this time. Just once, when Ling Feng was already in the hills, suddenly Su Hao's flock and his near-combat king-level men chased him and were about to kill him. But as usual, Ling Feng even provoked Su Hao by saying that he got all these pills from his ancestors. Obviously getting the insult, Su Hao was very annoyed and asked his men to kill Ling Feng right away. Even though Ling Feng could take on Su Hao, he was not strong enough to take on his subordinates who were at his higher level. Not just one, but there are 8 people at that level. Ling Feng tried to run away from those people, but the few people easily chased after him. Even Ling Feng was hit by that person's deadly attack. As far as he was concerned, luckily he was still able to stand up and try to escape. But to his surprise, the combined attack from Su Hao and his men was able to make Ling Feng helpless and fall into the hills. Su Hao immediately ordered his men to go after Ling Feng and make sure he was killed. The story continues with Ling Feng, who runs away from a family who intends to take revenge on Ling Feng, where after being hit by a thunder attack that seriously injured Ling Feng, he dodged to one of the nearby mountains, where here he would plan a counterattack against them, considering that fighting them head-on would be very difficult. But with this situation in place in the mountains, Ling Feng was confident of defeating all of them. Not far from there, the family finally arrived and started the attack. But it turns out that the place they stepped on had been given a trap by a Red Bird. But it turned out to be just a diversion because Ling Feng's new main attack was used just now, where he uses an item called 9-level stone, where this item can be large and weigh 50,000 kilos. With this heavy burden, Ling Feng managed to fall on them and defeat all with just one item. As usual, after defeating the enemy, they always take the luggage they have, and they found a treasure map. Knowing this, Ling Feng intends to head there. For the reason why he came to Holy Flame, there are 2 looking for expensive items and increasing his cultivation. The panel moves to a place. Where did someone tell that Su Hao and the other people were killed by someone unknown? Though at that time Su Hao also brought several people who had high realms. And when analyzing this incident, it turned out that the perpetrators were almost the same as the perpetrators who disturbed various large families such as the Lang, Cao, and Su families. Of course, with this incident, Ling Feng's condition will be very dangerous, because if the 3 big families join forces, his life will be in danger. Sin moved from the direction of Ling Feng, who had gathered with Ling King and Dugu, where they are now heading to the transmission gate. When passing through it, they were faced with Mount Yangyang. According to the treasure map found by Ling Feng said there is a lot of treasure in this place. Suddenly their conversation stopped when there was a roar heading this way, and it turned out to be a yin-yang monster beast. Knowing this, Ling Feng was very excited and was about to launch an attack, but before that, he asked King to protect Ling King and Dugu. With his strength now, it was not long before Ling Feng held a boulder and smashed it against the yin-yang beast. With that one attack, it managed to topple the huge monster. Then after defeating the monster, Ling Feng went inside, and inside it turns out there is a yin-yang hot spring. Of course, seeing him, Ling Feng and the others will be resting here, because playing in this pool can increase cultivation, considering that the water content in this pool has pure Kai. After an hour of soaking in hot water, they then continued their journey. And it's interesting that after soaking there, His gold body has evolved into a yin-yang body. This way at least he can hold about 50,000 kilograms. Meanwhile, when Dugu and Ling King were walking in the surrounding area, the two of them saw a flying boat nearby. Intrigued by this, they went inside and found out why this ship could fly and who moved it. When inside, it turns out that there is a luminous box guarded by a golden dragon. But it turns out that the golden dragon is just an illusion, because if it's real it will be very difficult to beat it. Now, after the golden dragon was defeated, a figure who possessed the Grandmaster realm suddenly appeared. It has not been explained who the man is, but he is the caretaker of this boat, where the man said that their guess was wrong because his secret was now the combat god. Knowing this, Ling Feng and the others were shocked and speechless. The man suddenly also offered Ling Feng an inheritance, but there was a condition that had to be met if he accepted it. But Ling Feng refused because he was cultivating in God's realm, but he didn't have the ability Ling Feng wanted. But here the man still insists and offers other things that he doesn't know yet. But the man's efforts were in vain, because what he offered turned out to be all learned by Ling Feng. Here Ling Feng, who was already getting annoyed, immediately asked to the point, "Is there any treasure of high value here?" The man only smiled there, but he would not tell it. Seeing this, Ling Feng got even more annoyed and intended to beat him up. But before hitting him, suddenly the man entered into a bead so that he could not be beaten with spiritual strength. But even so, what was done by the man earlier was just a disaster, because with this taijutsu Ling Feng managed to injure the man even though he was in the beads. As a result, because he didn't want to get hurt anymore, the man finally told him that there was a fire under the mountain. The man said that the flames were far stronger than the 4-flame fire, recalling that rumors said that within that mountain was the core ability of the 9-sin flame fire. Knowing this, Ling Feng rushed to get there. Given that he could master this ability, he would be invincible. And it turned out that when they were looking, they finally found the place, where it was seen that the core of the ability was in the middle of the mountain and around it there was hot lava. So to be able to pick up the thing was someone who could use the ability to fly. Since Ling Feng had already mastered the ability to fly, he was immediately impressed and took the core. And unexpectedly, when he touched the mana core, his soul felt like it was being burned. Even so, he will endure as hard as possible until he can master this ability. And to relieve this pain, Ling Feng passed the core to the red man and bird so that the red core would not completely burn him. After struggling for a long time to master this ability, Ling Feng finally managed to master it. After obtaining that power, Ling Feng asked the man about the history of this place. At first, the man refused to tell it, but because there was a reward in the form of absorbing the ability, finally the man accepted and was about to tell it, where the man told me that soon the registration would start soon. The fire list itself is a competition that is attended by some of the disciples of the strongest families that exist in Holy Flame. And the winner in that test will get a rank, and the list is Fire List. And the battle is about to begin in Flame City, according to the original agreement. Because the man had told him about it, Ling Feng would display an ability so that the man could absorb and make his ability into reality. It's a shame because Ling Feng's ability had reached the highest level. Instead of absorbing the man, it burned. And because he felt that the man was good, Ling Feng would take him on an adventure. After him, Ling Feng headed to where Flame City. Arriving there, he took the time to make a high-level pill, where Ling Feng combined super water and flame fire simultaneously. And it was thanks to the two opposing streams that the Earth Yin-Yang pill finally came into existence. Suddenly, an intruder saw this from behind. It turns out that the fat man is not evil, but a person named Chen Zio Feng idolizes him. So why does Chen idolize him so much? Because after seeing this, Chen just remembered that Ling Feng is the Blue King. Hearing this, Ling Feng was amazed and asked who the Blue King was. Chen explained that the Purple King was Ling Feng, where the name was because a few days before someone had the purple wings and had disrupted the 3 major families. And the purpose of meeting him was to tell him that the 3 families were plotting against him during the Fire List competition. But even though he had said all that, Ling Feng did not believe it. And to believe him, Ling Feng asked Chen to go to a place and give him the pill, where the place was the pill exchange place that Ling Feng had previously gone into. As well as Chen also ordered Ling Feng to tell the director to tell the Su family to keep a low profile and stand by his side. After saying this, Chen returned home and reported it to Ling Feng. And it turned out that the pill that Ling Feng wanted was an herbal medicine and a strength-enhancing pill. However, since the pills were not needed by him, Ling Feng would give them to Chen to strengthen himself. One day later, finally the API list was open, where there have seen many students who attended the event. And there were shown a few strong. First was someone from the hidden academy called Zhu Yin. And second is Bai Yunchen from the medical school. Third was Chen Zai, the super genius girl of the Chen family, who was none other than Chen's younger sister. And lastly is Leng Rushuang from the Leng family. And the 4 people earlier are the most powerful young generation and are often known as the 4 kings. Seeing this, Ling Feng became even more interested and would defeat the 4 kings and become the strongest king in Holy Flame. An hour later, the gate to the fire list opened, where Ling Feng would take the path to face Leng Rushuang head on. The panel moves to a place called Flame Ancient Avenue. There you can see that on their way Lang Feng was stopped by a group of robbers called Duo Robbers. It turned out that the robber claimed to be a duo of robbers. Seeing that his identity was being used by Lang Feng, and the Red Bird beat them to the punch. And as usual, they picked up some loot items from the robbers. Meanwhile, from behind suddenly someone appeared, who turned out to be Su Wuhan of the Su family. It seems here that Chen often clashes with him. It can be seen from Wu Shen, who dares to scold Chen in front of Lang Feng. But here Lang Feng would not interfere in their affairs and believed in Chen that he could defeat him. And because previously Chen drank the pill given by Lang Feng before, he could easily defeat him. And from a distance suddenly there was a monster attacking Lang Feng. But even though the monster is very strong, but this is nothing for him and managed to overthrow with just one attack. Then suddenly there was an announcement, and it was announced which ranking had the most points. It can be seen that the top position is occupied by Zhu Xin and the bottom is occupied by Lang Feng. Seeing this, it wasn't that Lang Feng was worried, instead he smiled and looked happy. And suddenly from behind, several people were rushing at Lang Feng. I don't know who that person is, but it seems they want revenge on Lang Feng, the Purple King. It didn't take long for them to launch several attacks, but even if they had superior numbers coupled with a high level of strength, it wasn't strong enough to be able to injure Lang Feng. And from the opposite direction, the Su family combined their strength to be able to kill Lang Feng. But the attack was successfully broken with item 9 stone level. With that, several members of the Su family were defeated. Seminatra was not far from Sidu. The Kai family, who didn't want to get involved, avoided the fight. But unfortunately, before running away, Lang Feng realized and killed them all. But it's not over yet, because there are still families left who can still attack. But luckily the sudden attack was stopped by his very strong physique. But trouble will begin to appear here, where one of the strongest disciples of the Su family appears and seeks revenge. But even though the girl's strength was extremely strong and could fly, Lang Feng was still able to evade and break the sacred armor and defeat the strongest disciple of the Su family. Seeing that several unaccepting Su family disciples attacked simultaneously, but it wasn't strong enough that they were battered against Lang Feng. But it wasn't over yet, because there was still the strongest disciple of the Lang family. Here, Lang Rushuang was already preparing to duel against Lang Feng to get revenge. Without any fear, Lang Feng started to land attacks. But unexpectedly his attack was parried by Lang Rushuang. Instead, Lang Rushuang countered his attack with ease. However, in the second attack, Lang Feng managed to start him off with his golden staff. But that little wound couldn't subvert Lang Rushuang yet. And in the end, Lang Rushuang, who realized that Lang Feng was extremely strong, showed his true strength, where appeared a white aura in the form of a dragon, where it looks like this attack is very strong. But unfortunately, the story ends here because the manhwa is still ongoing. So if you are still curious about the story of Lang Feng's duel against Lang Rushuang, you have to be patient first. Later, if the manhwa has released several chapters, we will discuss them as soon as possible. Thank you and sayonara.